Okay, a quick video about this Stratux ADS-B in receiver that I just built. This case here, it will come with the fan, and it's all sized right already out of the box. I think it's about 15 bucks. When you buy these two radios here, they also come with these cables and the antenna. And there's a lot of videos around how to put it together, but really it's it's not worth going through because it's so dead simple to put together. You basically just plug those two radios in. I'll get them out of the glare here. You can see one is labeled 1090 and the other one's labeled 978. You just plug the antenna for each one, and they are tuned for the different receivers, so make sure that you put the see if I can get that they are labeled, so you can just make sure you hook them up to the correct radio that's hooked up to the Raspberry Pi. There's also an AHRS board. You get the Raspberry Pi, which is this card, minus those radios. You buy the radios that come with the antennas. I opted to get an external GPS antenna. You can get one that's internal, and I believe it does fit inside the box. But I would really suggest getting the external one, because unless you've got a clear canopy, you're sitting under a metal plate, you're not going to receive hardly anything. Unless it's right beside a window. I mean, your mileage might vary, but I'd really recommend getting the external one and then Velcro it outside the, up against a window or something. And I've got a piece of Velcro right on my window ledge in my Cherokee, and that works fine. I have used this external antenna indoors, and even that is enough to kind of throw it off. So I would seriously recommend getting the external one. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to it. You just follow the instructions, bolt it together, and away you go. Okay, I've got it partially put back together now. You can see I've got the fan plugged into the fan controller output of the AHRS board. I know some people have their fan hooked up to the board itself, or maybe they've got some other type of fan controller. The fan will only come on if the CPU gets hot enough for it to need to come on, and it's basically does it all by itself. There's no setting or anything for it. It just comes on if it needs to. Save a little bit of power on your battery. That's where the antennas plug into the software-defined radios. Let's see, here is where you plug in the micro USB power, and that's about it. The HDMI goes unused, and as well as the audio output, and that's all there is to it. And here you see where I've got the GPS, the external GPS, plugged into one of the available USB ports in the back, and that just snakes up through this hole here. And that's about it. The software worked right out of the gate. Speaking of software, the card, you can buy these cards preloaded with the Stratux software. You can get the image off their website. I believe it's stratux.me. But really, it's so easy to do. You can either get your own card, use a card that you already have. But I mean, if you don't want to be hassled with it, buy theirs. But I mean, you're going to be upgrading it once in a while anyway, so you might as well learn how to do it. Okay, just a quick video showing the setup I worked out for the Stratux ADS-B receiver. That's the power bank that I built for the both for just a utility power bank and to run this without ever having to worry about it running out, because that'll probably run for 36 hours before I ever need to recharge it, maybe even longer. So that's providing the power, and it's going into the power there for the ADS-B receiver. I've got the antennas poking out the window. That's the GPS receiver. I used the external one, and it's plugged in right there. So it's basically just running up, and then I got all the excess just kind of tucked in there. And then that's about all there is to that. Okay, just a quick update on the power banks that I used. This one is obviously the one that I'm using right now. I got this one for a long camping trip that I was just on, and if I had it to do over again, I think I would just get one of these, even though it's more expensive. I think I paid 115 or 120 for this off of Amazon, and I didn't have to do anything. It just works out of the box, whereas this I actually had to build it. This one definitely supplies enough current, but so does this one. Some of the smaller ones don't, which is kind of why I built this. The main reason I built this was just because I already had a lot of the parts. The only thing I really had to buy was this plate and this little indicator here. But if you don't have any of that stuff already, I maybe kind of recommend just getting this. I think this is about 6 pounds, so it's not super heavy. This one, if I remember right, I think it's 9 pounds. So you're saving a little bit. This actually has a little better capacity as well. In the video, I mentioned that this would probably last 36 hours. I just finished a really long cross country to Arkansas and back, and probably, because we left it on the entire time, even when we were refueling. I just left it on, so it was running non-stop for about 12 hours there and back, including fuel and getting something to eat and all that good stuff. So it was about 12 hours there and 12 hours back, and it was dead by the time we landed back in Virginia. So I know this one, running a fairly high current load, lasted 4 8-hour sessions, so 24 hours, and it had a little bit left, whereas this one was completely dead. Your mileage is going to be vary a little bit, but this one lasted roughly 24 hours, probably a little less. It's probably closer to about 20 hours. I think I said 36 hours. No, you're not going to get 36 hours. At least not the battery that I have in here. If you had a bigger battery, it probably would. But this is such a nice, tidy, neat package, and it is able to supply enough current. So if I had to do again, I think I would. If I had to do again, I think I would just get this, even though it's a little more expensive. Okay, one quick note about these power banks. If you get one like this, and this is the kind of thing that most people use, most people don't use something like that. Make sure you choose wisely. Check the forums, see what other people are using, and works for them reliably. Some battery packs, even some of the bigger ones, I've got a big RAV power and it will not power the Stratux reliably. Actually, it won't power it at all. So make sure that it can supply the current that the Stratux needs. This one will. Of course, this is much bigger than most of the power packs that other people are using, but it's not obscenely big. If you want to go that route, this will definitely work. So if you do go this route, make sure that you get one that supplies enough current. Okay, this is the Stratux website. Of course, everything on the web changes over time, but as of this recording, this is what it looks like. To download the Stratux software to put on the Raspberry Pi, just click on the download link, and that will download the latest release version of the software. So we'll click on download, save it to your hard drive. I'm just putting it in a special Stratux directory that I created. Save. Of course, if you're using Firefox, it'll look a little different. If you look down here, you can see it's going to take about 3 minutes, so I'll pick up with it once it's done downloading. Okay, now we have the file downloaded. I'm in the directory that I saved it into. So Windows has a zip file handling built in, so just click Open, and you'll see the image file is part of that zip file. It's the only file that's in there, so we will extract that out to the Stratux directory. And that should take just a little while to unpack. Okay, now we have the image file that we actually want to use with the Win32 disk imager, so we'll pick up there. Okay, this is Win32 disk imager. There's other software available that does the same thing, but this is what I used. You basically want to specify a file here that you're writing from, which is the image file that we downloaded, and a device to write to. On my computer, that's H. I just plugged in a USB drive that was big enough just for demonstration purposes. It's not actually an SD card, but your SD card will just show up as a letter here. You may want to confirm that drive letter actually is your SD card if you've got multiple drives like I do, just to be sure you're not overwriting something that you really care about. So we'll specify the file that we just downloaded, which is in my Stratux directory. So you can see here, that's the image file, not the zip file. Open that up, and it shows up here. So we're writing it to our H file, or our H drive. You can verify the file if you want. If you have done that or you don't want to do it, click on Write, and it'll warn you you're about to overwrite something that will completely corrupt anything that was there before. And of course we do, because that's the only thing you're ever going to use that SD card for. So click Yes, and it starts writing to the SD card, the image to the SD card, which is basically a minimal Linux operating system that runs the Stratux software, and it has the boot up code and everything built into it. So we can see it's chugging away, writing to the SD card, and we'll come back to it when it's done writing. Okay, we're coming up on the finishing writing. It's at 95%. Let that finish, and you should get write successful, which means you'd be able to take that drive out now and put it in your Stratux. So we'll continue from there. Okay, you can see that this H drive is called boot now. That's the actual name of the partition that it wrote to the card. So we can go ahead and eject this out of our operating system. And okay, save to remove hardware. And now you'll just take the SD card out of the computer and put it in your Stratux. Okay, I've got a couple of tablets set up here. The one on the left is a larger Android tablet, and the one on the right is an iPad Mini 4. The iPad is the one that I use in the cockpit. The Android one is the tablet that I use on a regular basis because I kind of prefer it, but just the software available for the iPad is just better, so that's why I use an iPad in the cockpit. So I'll start off with the iPad and then move on to how to set it up for Android. Okay, this is the iPad. I've just got it propped up on a bunch of stuff. I really wanted to do this in the plane, but it was windy today, and there was some other things that I needed to take care of. So I just brought it inside and just ran the GPS over to a window so I'd have a GPS signal. So the first thing you'll do is go into settings and go into Wi-Fi. And it's as simple as that. It'll connect and say unsecured network. This one is already saved in the configuration, so it'll probably warn you with a pop-up or something. So once that's connected, and this is going to be a little different on the Android, which I'll show you later, go into the Flightbox utility, and it'll show green lights for what's working, what it's receiving, and what it isn't. On the top, you see that's connected to the Wi-Fi. It has a data connection. It's receiving 1090ES data. It's not receiving any UAT data or connected to any towers because I'm nowhere near a tower right now. And you usually can't see it unless you're like right next to the tower or up in the air. The next one is GPS data, AHRS data. And then the rest are just, you know, within limits, temperature and stuff like that. So over in settings, this is what you'll see in the Stratux settings on Android. It's pretty much identical, if not exactly identical, and it shows you all the statuses and gives you a lot of details about GPS and everything. And it shows connected. That's one of the main things you're looking for. Weather. I'm not receiving any weather information because, again, I'm not next to a tower. Traffic. That's the planes that it can see right now. And you can see that they're all, you know, big stuff, very high up. And GPS AHRS. It's kind of just like a quick and dirty AHRS display. In the plane, you'll want to set up the your Stratux to where it's going to sit, and then hit reset level, so it knows that okay, that's what level really is. And one thing I noticed. You can't see what it, well, I guess you can see. You can see I'm twisting the Stratux, but the heading isn't changing. So it's really only based on GPS. It's not based. It's not like a true magnetometer or anything. So and from what I hear, they're working on that. But right now, you know, if you're flying, it'll give you a pretty good idea of what the actual heading is, but it's based on GPS. It's not a magnetometer or a real magnetic compass. But you can see, like when I tip this, it is showing pitch changes. Now, don't use this for only use it as a backup because it's not going to be as precise or realistic as the one that you actually have certified in your aircraft. So just use that as a backup. And the rest of these are pretty obvious. You have to shake this pretty hard to get the G meter to register, but it does. Okay, towers. It's not showing anything because I'm not connected to any. I'd have to be in the air. And logs, unless you're actually a developer or you just care. Don't turn on the logging because it's just going to fill up your tablet for no reason, and the information isn't going to be meaningful to you unless you're developing for Stratux itself. And those are the various settings that you can turn on and off. Here's where you turn on the logs, and obviously if you're not developing for Stratux, just leave them off. Here you can set the AHRS sensor orientation. And it says point the Stratux so that the end that will be pointing toward the nose of the airplane is pointing toward the sky, and press the set forward direction button. I'm not going to do that because I've already configured it, but you just follow their instructions and it's as simple as that. Then you press that button, but I'm not going to do it. And calibrate gyros. And same thing, just do it when you're not moving. And reboot, shut down. I have had it lock up on me. I don't know if it was the Raspberry Pi or the Stratux software, but I did have to reboot it once. Okay. Flightbox also has some kind of nifty options. This is probably the neatest one. It actually shows your a more normal AHRS display. You see moving it around, which is a lot better than just the kind of the testing version that's in the settings. There's not a whole lot of software that uses it. I don't have ForeFlight, and I already have all those instruments in the plane anyway, so I don't really use it. It's more of a novelty, but it's kind of cool. So that's about it. I use Garmin Pilot, so nothing in the Stratux is gonna show up in Garmin Pilot. Maybe some time in the distant future when Garmin doesn't close out everybody but their own products, that'll change. But for now, if you want your Stratux to be completely integrated, you might be looking at ForeFlight or one of the other options instead. So now I'll move on to the Android. Okay, this is the my larger Android tablet. So what I want to do here is go into the settings, Wi-Fi, and then just connect back just for giggles. And same thing, connected. And I do believe on Android it gives you a warning as well that it's not a secure link. Now we go back. Okay, first thing I'll want to do is go into Stratux, status. This is pretty much identical to the iPad. You can see it's receiving a few UAT messages and lots of 1090ES messages, and the same GPS information, weather. I'm not connected to any towers, so again, there's nothing there. And all this stuff is exactly the same as the iPad, so there's nothing really to do. The reset level thing works exactly the same. Okay, if you're using AHRS, which is popular because it's free, one thing that you'll need to install is this AHRS external I/O plugin. And you'll click on Listen, and then you'll see a bunch of stuff scrolling by once it connects. So that's all the data that's actually being sent from your Stratux. So you can go back now and go into AHRS. Okay. And you can see, I'll zoom this in a little bit. You can see all those aircraft that you could see on the status page overlaid on the map, which is genuinely pretty cool. And it would show some graphic weather on here if I was connected to a tower, but I'm not anywhere near a tower, so, and I'm not in the plane. So to set up AHRS to use the Stratux, go into Menu, Preferences, GPS is one of them. GPS position source, but if you only want to rely on the I/O module, which is talking to the Stratux, select that one. And then when you go back, it's actually using the GPS information from the Stratux. So I'll go back into preferences, weather, same thing. Use ADS-B weather. Turn that on to use it. You can also go into the display and filter out some of the ADS-B traffic. If you don't want to see anything that's above 10,000 feet, then you can set it there. And I typically don't fly anywhere near that high in the Cherokee, so I usually set it at that. One thing I should note is I don't actually use this one in the plane. I have a mount for my phone that I use because it's just a lot smaller. I've got one of those bigger Galaxy Note 5s, which works nicely for that. Okay, you'll also want to go into where it says NexRad here. That's just the type of weather display. Depending on what you want, you can just have the METARs, nothing at all. I've kept it on NexRad, and I occasionally see some weather overlaid, but a lot of the time you won't see anything unless you're receiving data from a tower. So I think that's about it. Like I said again, I use Garmin Pilot, and there's nothing. It won't talk to the Stratux at all, so I'm kind of limited to AHRS and maybe a few other things, and the flight box utility on the iPad until I decide to either ditch Garmin and go with 4Flight, or Garmin decides to support it. So that's about it for connecting up to your tablet. Thanks for watching.